mother died when I was 9 years old. And from there on, the first year, three of us kids stayed at home. And then with my dad. And then they took two of them and took them, my aunt took two of them and took them to Italy. And one of them died over there. Of course, now they're both dead. And the other one got married there and brought his wife over here, or she came over here too. And then she went back. And from there I went on to this ranch, this milk ranch. And we peddled milk and lead from the Vatican's that time. And then from there we moved on about 3 miles below Deadwood. And we peddled milk then in Deadwood for, I don't remember how many years that we peddled milk in Deadwood. And at that time, I took milk to the homes of the prostitutes, and there was 400 of them in Deadwood. And I took milk from one place to the ranch. And there was a neighbor that lived across the road from us, and he was a bartender in the Mansion Saloon. And he told me then, he says, "Kid, if I catch you monkeying around up there," he says, "I'm going to boot you out of there." That was a friend.
How old were you, Grandpa?
Oh, I must have been about 15 years old then. And then my first job after that, when I quit peddling milk to Deadwood, I went to work in a roundhouse at night.
What was a roundhouse?
It was about 3 miles from the ranch.
What is the roundhouse?
What is it? What do they do at the roundhouse?
Well, they fire engines. They fire up engines in the morning, or whatever time that those engines leave for any place. And if they're in the roundhouse, they fire them up. And then
Trains.
Railroad.
We used to have to crawl into the firebox. That's when they burned oil already, and they had a oil burner in there, and we used to have to clean that out with a saw blade every day before they started that engine up to go to work. And it depended, of course, whether they went to Terry or from Terry they hauled ore and stuff into Deadwood. And then when they went outside of Deadwood, well, then there was a different time on them. But I worked from the evening until morning, 10 hours a night for $2.
How old were you when you met Grandma?
Well, I met Grandma. Grandma came to her aunt's place I think in 1916.
1916. You were 23 years old.
Well, that's the first year that I came to Montana. And I had a brother, Louis, that was living at the Coretta home, or the Capra home first. And that's how I come to Montana. But I came here to Montana on a horseback. And it took about 3 days. We'd go to Belfouche one day, and then from there we'd try to ride to Elzada. And when I came out, that first time I came out, there was a dance that night in Elzada. And I stayed for the dance, and then from there rode on to Capras where Louis stayed.
Well, did you meet Grandma at the dance?
No.
Oh, she wasn't dancing age.
No, she came.
I was in lead.
Oh.
She was Grandma was in Lead going to school. And
When-
her grandfather told her mother that there was no use to send girls to school because they got married anyway, so she took her out of school, and I was living at her aunt's place at the time, and she came and lived with her aunt for a while.
Who was that aunt, Grandma?
Aunt
Grandma.
Frances. Aunt Frances.
And she came to live with Aunt Frances. And I don't know today, I don't remember how all of us slept in that little cabin. It was a little cabin, two-room cabin, and she had
Three kids
3 kids
and a husband.
and her husband, and I and her all slept there in that two-room.
And now this was before you were married?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
that was before.
Probably put him in the barn.
That's when-
Probably, in the bunkhouse.
Bunkhouse, they didn't have a bunkhouse.
That's when she first came to the country. And then we moved on his ranch. He had a ranch up about half a mile from the old place. And we lived up there, and that was a two-room house, but it was a larger house.
Grandpa, you're talking about your parents.
My parents,
Yeah,
well,
and your brothers and sisters.
Tell them about that first. You're getting kind of ahead of your
Well,
story.
that's all right.
That's all right.
Yeah,
well, I thought they must have wanted to.
well, yeah, but tell about the whole family, like where all your brothers went. What
Well-
happened after your dad died?
After my dad died, the 2 of them went to Italy,
Yeah.
Which
Who-
two?
What were their names?
Marion and Fred.
No,
Caesar.
Caesar.
Marion and
Fred.
Caesar.
Caesar.
Not
Caesar,
Fred.
that was the youngest one, I guess, was Fred. And he was 5 days old when my mother died. And she got up at 3 o'clock that morning. How she got to our bedroom, I don't know. But she came and kissed us goodbye at 3 o'clock in the morning, and at 5 she was dead. And,
What about
My
your other
dad-
brothers now?
what?
What about your other brothers?
Tell them
No.
about where Uncle George went and Uncle Guy.
Well, then I and 2 of my brothers stayed at home for 1 year. And then they took, George went to live with a family in Lead, a name of Barlero. And Marion and Caesar went to the old country with my aunt. One of my aunts went to the old country, and her husband is buried in Lead, but I don't remember when he died.
Talk about your other brothers.
And the other brothers,
Who took Fred?
well, then I don't remember just when.
Fred was adopted, remember?
Yeah. Fred, Mrs. Noyes took Fred.
Well, Mrs. Noyes took Fred, and from my aunt Louise in Leeds, she had Fred, and this widow and her daughter, and took him and raised him. And she's the only one of the relatives that's still alive. She's
Who is? Mrs. Noyes? No, no.
You're all mixed up.
No, Mother. Well, go ahead, tell him then.
Not, the only relatives is Mary. Mary was Fred's wife. Mrs. Noyes and her daughter are both dead.
yeah.
But can I talk to, can I?
Yeah, yes, Fred.
Fred was, well, he was
One
5,
left.
he was 3 days old when he was, when the mother died.
5 days.
And this aunt, Louise, took him, but she couldn't keep him because she had kids of her own. So when he was 3 weeks old, this Mrs. Noyes took him. And
She adopted him.
yeah, him and, her daughter. And her daughter never married for a long, long, long time. She just died lately. Now, that's how it was.
Now, what happened to Caesar and Marion?
Caesar, Marion was over, and he grew up and was in the war.
Is that Albina's father?
Alina's
That's
father.
Albina's father?
Yeah.
Marion?
Marion was Albina's father. And Caesar died when he was as soon as they got over there, he was only about, just very young, about 10, 12 years old,
He wasn't that old, was he?
maybe not
Couldn't have
that.
been that old, Mother. He was only 4. Daddy was only 9 or 10, and he was the
Well,
oldest.
yeah, that's right. No, he died of pneumonia.
And he was
Right.
only 3 or 4 is what I remember.
Well, then
Now,
Mary Ann,
which one was this?
Caesar.
Caesar, okay.
Mary Ann grew up and was in the war. I mean, and, before this, let me think, before the war.
He was
He
in
came
that,
over here, when the twins were about 2 years old, he came over here and visited us. He was here for a year. And then, but they wanted him to stay because he was connected with the Fiat company, see? And they wanted him to stay and he could get a job here any place. But he had a girlfriend over there. So he went back and he married her. He said, he called her my Maria. So that's Albina's mother's. He got married and then they had Albina. And then when the war broke out, he was in the trucking business. He had a lot of trucks. And they
Confiscated.
all his trucks, and he didn't have a thing, and then they sent him to, and he went to Africa. They sent him to Africa as an interpreter over there. You
Is that where he
remember?
died?
And then he was over there for, quite a long while, and he got blood poison, and he's healed, mind you, and he died over there.
but he did have back in business over there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had business, well, he was an interpreter, and he was in business.
After the war.
And of course, Albina was about 16 or 17 years old. Well, they had maids over there, and they had just real nice, And Albina was she was old enough so she could be she was a stewardess, and she had planned on coming over here to see us about that time. And then when he died, then everything just went, Then the mother went back to Italy, and she wanted, then after a while, she wanted him to be moved and taken back to Italy. So all the brothers got together and sent $200 apiece, all the 6 brothers, and had him flown over to Italy and buried over there.
Now, tell him also, Uncle Marion also, wasn't he a race car driver?
Yes, that's what he was, mostly he's a race car driver.
Huh.
Yeah, he was really a nice, and he was a real smart guy. He was a good mechanic.
She remembers these things better than I do anymore because,
And,
after that
Do you
one.
remember him?
yeah, I remember him when he came over. Now, let's see. Uncle Lloyd, of course, ranched out there. Uncle Fred, Uncle George, Uncle Guy. You haven't told
Oh,
Mama.
Uncle Guy,
Okay.
he was a telegraph operator, and he lived in Yankton after he was married for a long, long time, and then he moved to Dickinson, North Dakota, and he was there until they moved to Albuquerque for a good many years, and he died just 4 or 5 years ago. And George was working at the Homestake in the Homestake store in Lee, until, they got in
Well, I don't know.
some kind of trouble. The miners got in some kind of trouble.
They got
Over
into a
unions.
strike. is
Huh?
what
Or
they did.
unions.
They were,
The union, that's right.
Unions.
yeah,
deal.
they were working for $3.50 a day, for $3 a day at the Homestake mine for shovelers and $3.50 for miners.
Yeah.
And that's when they went on a strike for that money. When they got that money, then they all went back to work in the Homestake. And I was in Terry at the time, went to Terry. I was born in Lead, South Dakota, in 1893. And then from there we moved to
Terry.
Terry. And my father was a shoemaker. But I don't know whether he worked as a shoemaker at that time or whether he worked in the mine for a while. That I don't remember. But he was, and they made shoes by hand. And so they cut the soles. They'd take a knife and cut a a groove in the bottom of the soles, and then they sewed them by hand. And they take it and wax this thread, and they use a hair of some kind, I think it was a horsehair, for a needle. And he made shoes in Terry, South Dakota, and then I think he died in about 3 years after my mother did.
He was younger than she was.
He was,
They both died at the age of 45.
Yeah, she was, yeah.
'Cause
Well, you didn't finish telling about.
Now, something you didn't touch on. One time you told me you took a covered wagon or a wagon and came out and saw that the Indians were camped not too far away.
Yeah, that's after we were married.
You remember that?
that was,
Well, you should tell about that, because that's something that the grandkids will.
Oh, this sounds
I was
interesting.
working when Grandma came to Montana, I was working for her aunt.
Yeah, I know that. We covered that.
But no, tell her, after we were married, we didn't have any potatoes. And you decided to go to Belfouche to buy potatoes for the winter, remember?
In the
And-
fall,
And
late fall.
and when he left in September,
Like
it was
that.
a nice warm day. Go ahead and tell the rest.
I got as far as Alzada with the team of horses. That's all we had. There was no cars at the time. And I got as far as Alzada, and it hit a storm. So instead of going on to Belfouche to get these potatoes, I came back home.
Yeah,
And,
but what about the Indians?
Tell about the Indians, though.
well, that night where I camped, there was a bunch of Indians pulled in there pretty close to my camp, and they camped there. I was afraid of those Indians, so I didn't sleep that night. But I had my horses turned loose, and they never bothered any. The one of them did come over there and ask for something to eat. I forgot what it was, and I didn't have any. Anyway, they didn't bother anything at all. So the next morning it was stormy, so instead of going down to Belfouche, I turned around and went back home. And that winter, we lived in the old house on East Fork. Her mother had a ranch down in East Fork. We lived down there. And but before that, I lived with her aunt who was working for her. That's when we had that little two-house with just 2 rooms in it, and I and her husband and
Okay, repeat yourself.
Yeah, but that's before you were married.
yeah,
We want to know
that-
after you were married. You already covered that.
well, she came and stayed with her aunt.
I know, we got that, Grandma.
Okay, now let me tell you then.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're repeating.
okay. I came out here, I came from the Bitter Valley. We came here because my grandmother went and after my dad died, they wanted my mother to come out here and file on a ranch. They were greedy.
Who wanted her to do that?
My grandparents. So
Her mother and dad, her grandparents, which were the Cappers.
Yeah, and they wanted her to, so they thought maybe, she'd file on the ranch and they'd get it, all that. Well, anyway, she wouldn't come. So my grandmother came out there and took the 2 little kids, my brother and Anna Smith, away from, she came in August and brought them out back with her here. So my mother, she had to come over and get her kids. So she came to Lee, she brought me to Lee, left me and Lee to go to school, and took Tina out here. She was in grade school. And she filed on this ranch, and she stayed here, of course, then. And then my grandparents kept telling, my grandfather mostly, kept telling mother, she don't need to go to school, they're going to get married. They get married anyway, they don't need no education. So I only went to the 10th grade. Didn't finish the 10th grade. So she came to Leiden, took me out of school.
Grandma should tell about her family, and then after her family, then they can talk about how they met and everything. Tell about your family, about your sisters and your
How did your family get to the Bitterroot?
Well, after my dad and mother got married, they lived in Leeds for a while, and then
What did your dad do?
he was working in the mines in Leeds. Well, but they
where were they from?
were.
Your dad. Tell 'em where your
My dad came from Tyrol in Austria. And he came over here when he was 18 years old. He came here because he had a sister here.
He came from Clay's. Why don't you tell the name of the town?
Claes Cagnol's the name. And he was here and he worked here in the mine for a while. And he used to go around and visit these Italians. So my grandparents were living in St. Ange. So he went to visit one day and he met my mother. The way he met her, I think it's kind of funny. When he was there, she was down in the cellar, and she came up carrying a sack of flour on her shoulders. And he said right then that was the girl he was going to marry. So
She
anyway,
carried a good sack of flour.
carrying a little sack of flour. That was true. So anyway, they got married, and they had a baby about a year later, and they moved to
The baby died.
Terryville.
The first
And the
baby
baby died when she was only just a few months old of pneumonia.
What was her name?
Julia. And she's buried in St. Ange now. Then my dad decided to go to Butte, move to Butte, so that's when they moved to Butte, went to Walkerville. And that's where I was born in 1902. And he worked in the mine then too. And then they decided, he and my uncle never was married, they decided they heard about this Bitterroot Valley, and it was like, up in the, it was just all bushes and trees and all over. So they decided to go out and buy this land, and they cleared it all with themselves, 108 acres. So then they moved out there, my mother and my uncle.
Tell about the time the Indians used to camp down by your house. And
Okay, and then, of course, I moved, that was there until I wasn't 6 years old, because then they took me back to, he went to in the wintertime, he'd go to Butte to work in the mine, and summertime he'd go out there. So when I was just about 6 years old, he took me to Butte, so I could go to school. And
Then you stayed
I never
with
knew that.
I was staying
you stayed with friends of his in Walkerville.
in Walkerville.
and your father.
No, we lived I was born in Walkerville, and they lived there until they went to the Bitterroot Valley, see?
Yeah, but how come when you went back, who'd you stay with?
Your father.
I stayed with a cousin, with his niece. When I went back to Butte, we lived with his niece. And a nephew. But the nephew was a drinker. He was just drunk all the time. And one time when my dad always slept with my dad. And so one night he came in drunk, and he had a knife and a gun, and he told my dad, he says, "Which one do you want to die with?" He was drunk. Of course, my dad woke up, he didn't know what to do. So he talked to him, and he opened the window and put me out of the window, and some way or other, I don't know how it was, he went and got the police and got him arrested. And then that's when he took me back to the Bitterroot Valley, and I started to school there then. And I didn't hardly know a word of English.
Tell me, you and I have talked about the fact that you lived in Walkerville, which was not the Italian community, which was
No.
Meaderville was the Italian community.
Yeah.
And what did the kids used to call you?
Called me a dirty dago. Yes, and I used to cry and cry and cry because
You couldn't speak any
I
English.
couldn't speak very good English, and I don't know.
And they would have never called her that.
In Meaderville.
In Meaderville.
No, not, but we were in Walkerville. And I was about 6 years old, and they used to send me down after beer. you know, them time, they had their lunch pails, you know. They were, about that high. And every once in a while, the saloon wasn't very far from where we lived. He'd give me a quarter, and he sent me down to this place to buy the beer. And I'd bring beer for him. Every day I'd buy the beer. Well,
Well, now tell
You
about,
had told me that he would come walking up the street and hand you his bucket and say, "Here, Lena, go get me a bucket of,
that's right.
give me a
That's how
bucket
it
of
was.
beer."
In fact, when I was in Lead, I lived with my aunt, and she lived above the saloon, too. They owned it, and they lived above the saloon. And from the hallway, there was a door coming, you had to go through a hallway to go upstairs. And there was a door in the hallway. And she did the same thing. She'd give me a quarter, and I'd go and knock to the door in this hallway, and they'd give her a bucket of beer, and I'd bring it upstairs. So I was really,
you're the beer carrier.
I was the beer carrier, yeah.
Well, now tell about living in the Bitterroot and the kids that were born there, your family now. Tell about your family.
Well, anyway, I was born in Butte, and I think my sister, Tina, Celestina, the first sister,
Oh, first,
the one that was burnt.
okay, well, tell about
Let's
that.
see, I have to stop and think. She was born there yet, and then then they moved down to Hamilton, Woodside. And
They
Tina
moved
was
to Woodside, they were in Victor first, more closer
well,
to Victor.
Victor and Woodside. We lived in between Victor and Woodside.
Okay,
We lived 5 miles from
Right.
Victor and 3 miles from Woodside.
right.
And Tina was born there.
That's the first
Tina was born the first one there.
Well, what Tina?
Tina.
She was named after the other
Right.
sister.
Okay, well, tell about the first one then. Tell about her when she was born and
Well,
about,
I don't know too much about what she was born, but anyway, when she was about 14, 15 months old, she got scalded. Now, I was just big enough to open the door. My mother was washing, and she always boiled the clothes, and she took the boiler off of the stove and set it on the floor to get the pillows out. And she had closed the door in between the bedroom and the living room, wherever she was washing. But I was just big enough to open the door. And she had made us dolls out of a sock, something made a sock. And my sister was just rocking her dolly like that and walked. And she got into that room. My mother had her back turned, and she was rocking her doll, and she fell back into the boiling water. And she died on my birthday on the 17th of January. This poor little kid. I think it's my fault. It was my fault.
She's buried in St. Ange.
No, not that one. She buried in the Bitterroot. Well, then shortly after that, Tina was born. No, about a year after, Tina was born, and named Tina the same as named her, see.
Celestina?
And it was Aunt Tina. And then there's 3 years difference between Aunt Tina and Aunt Anna.
there isn't, there's only 18 months.
18 months. And I suppose about that much from Uncle Tony.
13 months, really.
Yeah.
Aunt Tina and Aunt Anna are just from November to January.
Right, they weren't very far apart.
14 months.
Yeah. And
Her brother died in Montana.
Yeah, he was the only one. Tell about him now.
well, he was the only one. And
Only boy.
the only boy. There was 5 girls. She'd already had 5 girls, and there's little Tony, my brother. And he was only about, I don't know how old he was when they came out here. He wasn't school age yet when they came here. And of course, he lived with my mother all the time. And when after high school, he went to high school in Broadus, graduated, and he used to milk cows for sandals in Broadus while he was going to school to make enough money, for
Boarding
his,
room.
huh?
He milked cows for his board and room, didn't he?
For board in the room, yeah. Anyway, one spring, he got bit by a tick.
Yeah, but that was after he was out of school a
Oh,
long
yeah, he was already a grown man. He got bit by a tick, and it affected his heart, and this was in April, in the spring, April, and the next December, he really got sick. And by June the next year, he was dead. 28
Yeah,
years old.
He was 29 years old.
28.
Yeah, I had tick fever.
Rocky
and
Mountain fever.
Rocky Mountain fever
Rocky
then.
Mountain fever.
They didn't know much about it then.
Left him with a heart.
They didn't know anything about the tick fever at that time.
I don't know what else to
Yeah,
tell
that's
you.
something Dad is missed out on. Now, he also saw Calamity Jane. He should mention those
Oh, yeah,
things, 'cause those are
Calamity
important.
Jane, you tell her about that.
Oh,
Calamity Jane, your mother, when you sing Calamity Jane.
well, she was in Deadwood at the time. Of course, before that, she lived, this Calamity Jane lived in Terry.
Yeah.
But when I found out who she was in Deadwood. And I don't remember just what I did, but we went to where she was. And somebody told me,
No, you said your mother went to a doctor.
oh, she went to a doctor in Deadwood, South Dakota. We used to have to take a stage from Terry and go to Deadwood, South Dakota, to this doctor.
And you went to a place to eat.
And he lived upstairs.
The doctor.
The doctor lived upstairs, and across the street there was a Frenchman that had a restaurant. And that's where we used to go and eat our meals, where this Frenchman was. And right now I have even forgotten his name. I used to know
Well,
him.
don't make a difference, his name, tell her about then Calamity Jane. Makes no difference.
What we want to know is about you seeing Calamity Jane.
Well, I don't remember exactly where we were when they told us who she was.
You went to that restaurant, you told me again and again that you went to that restaurant to eat, and she was in there.
And she was in the
And
restaurant.
yeah, and they told her it was Calamity Jane.
She was in this restaurant and eating dinner, and they told us who she was.
Do you remember what she looked like?
No, I don't.
But you remember she smoked a cigar. Now, you told me that just a couple days ago.
She was what?
Smoking a
She
cigar.
was smoking a cigar,
Oh, yeah.
and she was rather old already then, yeah.
Yeah, she used to smoke like a man. And she was smoking when I went to this restaurant. And where she ate her dinner, she was smoking this. Afterwards, she smoked this cigar. And that was Calamity Jane. And
Now, there's another old fella you used to talk about, Potato Creek Johnny.
Potato Quick Johnny, what about him?
Tell about that,
Potato
because
Creek
that's all
Johnny.
part of Deadwood history.
was after we moved to after I moved to Deadwood on this milk ranch.
Yeah.
And he lived about 2 or 3 miles southeast of us. And that was what they called it.
Why did they call him that?
That is something I don't know why. They called him Potato Creek Johnny.
But every time they had a parade in Deadwood, which they always did every year, I remember seeing him myself. He had a long beard, long whiskers, long hair, and he always carried a, what do you call them, not a shovel, something, a pick,
A pig?
a pick or something, yeah, on his shoulder in the parade.
And that's,
Why they called him Potato Johnny, Quick Johnny, I don't know.
at that time, they used to wash gold along the road where we drove to the Deadwood with the milk.
Yeah.
Well, they used to take this gravel and in a pan, about the size of that there, and they'd wash this in the creek. They'd wash this, and the gold would go to the bottom of the pan, and the gravel and stuff, they would wash out. And they'd save this gold. In fact, I washed some of it myself. But any place where there was any gravel, they would wash this gold in this pan. And it came out in little grains. Some of it about the size of a match head, and some of it larger. And then they would take it to Deadwood and sell this gold and get cash money for it. And
I want to tell about that fire in Coeur d'Alene with my dad.
Now, that's something you should tell about.
Yeah. But that's, I can't remember, it must have been, see, he died in 1930.
I gave you a nice article on it, you should have,
Huh?
remember that nice article I brought you about
I
it?
should have brought that. Yeah.
Your father died when, in 1913?
No, he died in 1930, but in 1912, there was a big, 1910, there was a big fire in Coeur d'Alene, and it really was a big one. And the ashes, where we lived, it got dark at 3 o'clock, and there was ashes just coming down.
Where were
over
you
the-
living?
Hmm?
Where were you living still?
In the middle of that,
Okay.
yeah. Well, anyway,
That's just right up the mountains.
it's just over the mountain. And when this fire started, they were trapped. So he and 5 or 6 other guys.
35 men,
5 men, was there?
35 men.
35 men, okay. They spent a week in a tunnel to get away from the fire. Well, when that was all over with, my dad always had terrible, terrible headaches. He was always sick. And in 1912, he started coughing. Oh, we all had the whooping cough. And he started coughing. He thought he had the whooping cough too. But we got over it, he didn't. Anyway, this is with his black lung. And
the
he
fire?
lived exactly 1 year from the time, and this was in November, he lived exactly 1 year. Yeah. He died in 25th of November, 1913.
So he had black lung from the
Uh-huh.
fire or from
Well,
mining?
from the mine
Oh.
and the fire
Fire
brought it on, see, smoke.
Something
I think he
interesting,
had miner's consumption,
Yeah.
interesting about this fire,
and there was a lot of that.
I remember her telling me about this. So then when I was Spokane this last year, Helen and I kind of took a little trip around Wallace, Idaho.
Oh, wow.
And they have these, Chamber of Commerce pamphlets, so they have a memorial there to some man who led all these firemen into this tunnel and saved them. It said the fire was so bad that they couldn't even see the sun in Chicago. That it was such
Oh, my
covered
word.
such a
Broad
a
area.
very large area, that you couldn't even see the sun in Chicago. And I remember her telling me about it. So I took this home because I thought, I bet you that's the same one. And it was.
I got the clipping.
Yeah.
No, I tell you, it was 3 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock at night. All the chickens went to bed, and it was
So
dark.
It must have been really.
Huh?
And they were in this tunnel for a week,
They were in tunnel for a week.
and your father was one of those.
He was the one of
But
them.
they all came out of it alive, huh?
Yeah, after this fire.
There were the only several people were killed
Yeah.
because it was such a
But I know, I was
huge
so
fire.
scared that time. Gee whiz.
How old were you then?
I was about, let's see, 1913. I was about 11, 10, 11 years old.
That was really interesting to read that because I
I
thought,
bet,
hey,
yeah, it
that's-
brought back a memory,
really
didn't it?
is.
Yeah.
Well, then we had an uncle living with us too, all these years. We had an uncle living with us.
What was his name?
Huh?
What was his name?
Emo. Emo.
Emo?
Emo lived.
And that was your father's brother?
Yeah, and he lived with us all the time. In fact, when we moved from there, he lived there by himself.
In
In
the
Hamilton.
veteran.
And he died in 1920.
And all those buildings are still standing there too.
The what?
All those buildings that your dad and your uncle built, all the
Yeah.
barns and the house and
The
everything.
barn is partly torn down, and they started to tear the barn down, I don't know how many years ago. In fact, Aunt Anna Smith and I went and got a piece of board so we'd have a memory of this barn. And the guy says, oh yeah, you're going to better take it because it's going to be down. It's still standing there the way it is, partly down.
Well, I and her brother went down there to that ranch when we was, one time, when we went down there purposely. I don't remember what our reason was for going there, or whether it was just to see this place or not. But I was on that place.
We were thinking about moving down there ourselves, don't you remember?
No idea.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
one time you guys were thinking about
Yeah.
moving. Okay, Grandma, tell us a little bit more about living in the Bitterroot. Because I think you lived in the Bitterroot for part of the year and in Butte for the other part.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Are you ready now?
Yeah?
Well, when I started school, well, before I started, we were living in the Bitterroot. And then when my dad had to go to work in Butte, and I was old enough to go to school, he took me with him and left the rest of my mother. Took me with him so I could go to school, and that's when I lived in Walkerville. That's when they decided that there wasn't very many Italians there.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't like me anyway, and they used to call me a dirty dago, and I used to cry. I cried and cried and cried.
Dirty what?
Dirty dago. But I tell you, and like I told you about going down for beer for my uncle, for my folks were there, and I always remember my godmother. Her name was Mrs. Finnegan.
Mrs. Finnegan?
Mrs. Finnegan, yeah. I remember her. She was a real nice lady, and she was my godmother. I was baptized. I don't know when I was baptized, when I was 3 months old. But then I remember when I was going went back to school. And of course, Butte was. Besides that, we didn't go very far. And Butte didn't dare go very far because there was what do you call them? Where they dug the mines. They were covered up.
Oh, the shafts, the mine shafts.
Yes, they were very dangerous. And we couldn't go out, right there in Butte, but we couldn't go out away from them very far out.
From the houses.
Mm-mm. Because you might go into a shaft. And then the smoke was terrible. It was just terrible back there. And the most important thing that I liked in Butte when I was a kid was the Columbia Gardens. Oh, we used to go there on Sunday, and they had rides, and we used to get our goodies, and we used to spend the whole day. And that was the highlight.
Now, who all would go out with you there?
My dad, and my mother too when she was there. She'd come and go, And this niece of my father's, we used to go out and spend the day. And that's about all I remember much about Butte at the school. So.
You mentioned one time about Butte being so dark.
Yeah, Butte was dark. That was smoke.
From the smelters?
From the smelters, it was dark and smelly. Yeah. So.
What else do you remember about Butte? You told me one time about the Chinese.
Oh yes. I think it was twice a week. I might remember twice a week. But these little Chinamen had come, and I was scared of him. He carried his basket. I don't know how he carried his basket on his shoulder. He had some beautiful vegetables. I remember it, real beautiful, nice fresh vegetables. And he had his hair braided down the back, and he'd come and peddling his vegetables. Twice a week. But I was scared of him. And he had sandals on. I always remember the sandals he had on. He was barefooted and had sandals on, and dressed like a Chinaman. Dressed like a Chinaman. Yeah.
You spent summers in the Bitterroot. What did you do in the summers over there?
Well, I was pretty young. I didn't do much of anything. I just.
But you had a good friend, Maud Breckenridge.
We had Maud. Yeah, I met her when I first went there and went to school. I met her at school, and her mother died shortly after I met her. And so Maud was living with her father. And she used to come to our house an awful lot. And she was really my best friend. And we'd go out together. And really, when we went to dances, she was a beautiful girl and very smart too. And of course, all the boys would flock with her, So and then
you corresponded with Maud all these years.
I corresponded from the time I came here in 1917 until she lived here a few years, until she got so she couldn't write anymore,
Yeah.
Yes, all the time we corresponded. And then when I went to see her, I hadn't seen her for, let's see, 20 years, and I went back to see her. Oh, I tell you, we were so, she was just tops with me, and
Awful close.
awfully close.
Now,
And
when
she-
when you were in the Bitterroot, Aunt Tina was still there, and was Aunt Anna there
Mhm.
with you too then?
Until Grandma come and got Aunt Anna and Uncle Tony and brought them here. See, but Aunt Tina stayed with us, with me, and then until my mother came.
And then when your father died,
Then when my father died, my mother shortly after had a sale, and we came to Lead. Came to Lead on, I remember, on my birthday too, it was just 17th of January when we landed in Lead. And I stayed, then she left me there to go to school with my aunt, because I was in high school. I was then. And she took, and then she and Aunt Tina was my grandfather there. They came out in the covered wagon, come out to Boys. And I stayed in Lead all that summer, that's the rest of that winter and all that summer. And then they come and got me, and I came out here. And when I came out here, he had been out here, Grandpa had been out here, and he was going back. We just passed each other on the road. Remember? So, and then I stayed until June, and then I went back again. And that's when they come and got me. In December, they come and got me, so I wouldn't have to go to school anymore. So.
Well, I came out here in 1916, and
now why did you come out?
well, my brother Louis was staying at Capper's, and I came out to see him. At that time, I hadn't planned on staying, but I come out here to see him, and then he went down and stayed with the woman that he married. It was Coretta's, and it was about a mile from Capper's. But they took him, I don't know, I think it was after my mother died. He stayed in Lead with a family by the name of Barleros, and then that's where they got Louis and
See,
brought him.
Cappers were living in St. Ange. They had a ranch in
St.
St.
Lawrence,
Ange.
South Dakota.
And they took him from there, and then from there they brought him out to Boys.
Now, wasn't there a reason that a lot of the Italians settled out around Boys at the same time?
Well,
Wasn't it because wasn't there a strike in the mines?
Yeah, yeah.
yes, but the reason that a lot of the people came out to Montana was that they opened the country up for homesteads. So they came out and took homesteads, and that's what I did too. I took a homestead that part of it on the north side joined with shoulders, and on the west side I took 320 acres additional there. And you had to do so much work each year to prove this land up and get a title to it.
Well, mostly they came out because they were striking the mines, and then this land opened up, and everybody think they would get rich, to come out to Montana. Cappers was one of the first ones that came out in 1910, and Aunt Mary and Uncle Louis, that's a Capper daughter, they pitched a tent, and that's how they start building their houses. And little by little, all the Italians, they settled in this community.
Name some of the families that came out that you remember.
Oh, the Corettas.
Charlie and Francis Coretta.
Yeah, there was Anna Trucano's mother and dad. My mother, her dad was dead. Then there was my Aunt Frances, Coretta, and my Uncle Charlie, then Maggie and the Pascos, and then John Barberos. Tony was my stepdad. You know, my mother married him later on. And the Trucanos, Dominic Trucanos and Baptist Trucano. Then there was
And they were no relation to Grandpa's family, were
No,
they? Just a separate Trucano
a
family?
separate Trucano. And there was the Vinas. Then there was Pete Pascos and Janinos. And who else? Oh, there was a lot of them. And Cornelius, Frank Cornelio, Jim Cat-Eye, and his brother Marion, and
Did the Borlas come out about that time too?
who's that?
Borlas?
And Borlas, yeah, the Borlas.
And one of the Borla boys got killed right there on the ranch.
I'm talking about that.
He had a rifle in the car, and he took this rifle off by the barrel, and the trigger hit the side of the car somewhere, and it went off and he had killed him.
See, and then there was,
Below that was Moulton's.
no, I was thinking about that Tony's, Ernest, shoot, oh, that, Ernest, somebody, can't think of his name. Oh, Ernest Paul, he was Italian too.
Is that Margaret Paul's?
No relation to
No
Margaret
relation
Paul.
to Margaret Paul.
And
He had a son, he had a nephew by the name of Tony, and then there was,
Hymenes.
the Imanes, and John Bellas. John Bella came quite a bit later, and he had the bar in Boys. And he's the one that used to buy our moonshine for $40 a gallon. Yeah, Grandpa used to moonshine, and almost every night we had that still going, and he'd sell it to this John Bella. He had the bar, $40 a gallon.
What could you do with $40 a gallon? With $40?
We could do a lot. We could do a lot.
At that time, 40 gallons, or $40 was lots of money.
You bet.
And I played at dances, and I used to take this moonshine and hide it in the creek above the dance hall. And if anybody wanted any, why, then I'd go and get it.
This was after you were married.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was after we.
Let's go back to where Grandpa first met you.
Well, when I came out in December, after they took me out of school. It was in December, and I came out, in fact, I came out with, in a horse and buggy, not a covered wagon, and with Henry Taylor, Adeline Taylor's husband. And then I went to my aunt's, and he was working there, he was living there. And so then, I hated him. He had long whiskers on, and he had dirty clothes on. Seemed like he was, he looked terrible. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with him. I was a city girl, then. But anyway, this was about the 20th of December, and on the 24th of December, he took me to a dance. Pine Hill. And he didn't have a car, but he hired a fellow by the name of Shelley. And Shelley is the guy that married us finally. He was just as the feast. But he hired him to come and get us, to take us to this dance. Well, the guy came and got us, and he got halfway to Boys, and the car broke down. And cold. Oh, it was cold. So then, anyway, he fooled around there, and he got it fixed. And we got halfway to Pineal, and the car broke down again. So then we had to walk into the dance, about a mile, really, a mile.
Now, he shaved his beard?
Then he had shaved his beard. So
You weren't going to go out with him unless he shaved his
he looked
beard.
a little bit different. Yeah, he cleaned up after I got there.
And we lived with her aunt, and she was a hot temper.
Well, that was another time, Grandpa. This is when just you and I went to the dance.
Yeah.
And that's when we then Shelley's car, you couldn't start it anyway, you couldn't start it, we couldn't get home. So we hired, there was the sheriff, somebody wanted to take us home, but this guy was so drunk, we wouldn't ride with him.
This was the sheriff or?
This was a sheriff up there then. He got so drunk, so we had got somebody else to take us home that morning, so.
I don't remember it, who took us home though.
And then after that,
And that would have been in about 1918?
no,
No,
that was in
1917.
1970, because in September of...
Because you were only about 15 then.
Yeah, I was 15, that's all, yeah. And see, because then, because he went to the service, he went to the Army in September of 1917, didn't you?
Well, I don't remember.
September of 1917, he went to the Army, and he stayed there until
3 months in the Army.
December. Let's see, maybe stop and think of the dates now.
But
I came from Montana in 1916.
already had met her.
1916, 1917 is when Uncle Jack went. In September of 1917, he went to the Army.
Went to Camp Lewis.
And then that was, the armistice was signed in in December of 1918, he came home. That's when he got the flu, and he was real sick. And then the next year, in March of 1919, we got married.
Well, we was already living with your mother then.
Yeah, but he was working for
That was in March of 1919?
1919.
Yeah, it was, I was living.
So you are, you've been married 69 years this spring?
69 years in March. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, what did you do on a date?
On
I
the
mean-
date, we used to go to dances. The only thing they did was dancing. They go to, but not only us, young people, even the old folks would go to dances. They'd all pile in a wagon or in a sleigh and all that, with a horse and a buggy, or a wagon, and we go, everybody would go.
How far was a typical dance? How far did you have to travel?
Well,
Pineal was the one that was the most of. That was about, it was probably 14 miles, something like that, horse and buggy, horse and wagon.
Now, you stayed more than just one day for that, though, didn't you?
We stayed all in the morning, we stayed all night till
all
daylight
night
the next
till
day.
Daylight till the morning.
Well, we couldn't come home in the daytime, we stayed then danced, and they danced all night long. And if a girl stepped outside of the door, why, she was no good. You didn't dare step outside of the door with a boy or anything else.
Or you had to stay right in the dance
Right
hall
in
the
the
whole
dance
time?
hall, you bet.
In front of everybody then?
Everybody.
And I played for dances.
You didn't play for dances then,
No,
not then.
not then, but later.
Yeah, but
Later
anyway,
years.
Well, did you ever step outside?
I didn't dare step outside. Oh, no. All these old ladies especially, they just kept a watch on you. No, sir. No, I didn't dare. No.
Well, what else do you remember from that period of time?
Oh,
Well, you can tell him what your aunt did. She was hot-tempered when she...
well, another time we went to a dance, and my uncle stayed home, and he had a bunch of pigs, and he used to cook the grain for him on the cook stove. And we got home, it was daylight, we got home, and she thought he'd be up and have a coffee made for us and all that. Instead of that, there was no coffee. She had such a hot temper, she took the boiler and everything and just threw it out in the yard. She called him all kinds of names, too. No, and then, when my mother moved in her own house, Uncle Louis built it, and Uncle Grandpa's gone, no? No, they broke the land. They broke the land, I don't know how many acres, and
40.
Tina and I, and Aunt Anna, and Uncle Tony was really small. We picked sagebrush. That thing was all covered with sagebrush. We picked all that sagebrush and covered that land cleared it, then they planted they planted corn and beans. And that year, my mother went back to Bitterroot to take care of the place or something. And just us kids stayed there. And we picked 20 sacks of beans. And picked the beans and then thrashed them all ourselves.
By hand.
By hand, with a stick. We had a stick, we put on a tarp. And then we picked a lot of corn. And every day, every night in the evening, some of our neighbors would come up, my stepdad and his brother, and if you remember Diana talking about Linton Edwards, some of the Edwardses, they lived right across the creek from us. But anyway, they were there, and I was kind of sweet on that boy. I don't know, Linton, I just liked him. But he was bashful. But anyway, they'd come and help us husk this corn, and every time we'd get a red ear, we had to kiss somebody. And that guy was so bashful. So we spent the whole winter husking corn.
They just lived about let's see, from here to
Just across the creek from us.
wasn't very far. We just
Anyway, that's how we did.
half a mile, I
That's
guess.
how we spent the winter.
So your mother and you kids proved up that place then,
That's right.
with no man.
No man. No.
Now, where was this place at?
This was down on East Fork. Let me see if I can tell you exactly. Do you know where the Borlas live?
Yeah.
Well, it's right east of the Borlas, right down on the creek. And we had to cross the creek and go up on the flat, going towards Barbaros. There was all that land. How much was it? 10, 20 acres? Oh, it was more than 10 acres. 20 acres that you broke it. You and,
Well, you had to break so many acres.
yeah, but I mean that one time. That's when we planted all that corn and those beans.
Oh, that was just up on the hill
Yeah.
from your mother's house.
But that was about 20 acres. I guess that's what we did.
Now, who were your good friends at that time? Who were you close to in the community?
And,
Well, you was
it was Lena Trucano was really my closest friend. Lena Trucano. And the
Uncle
girl.
Louie's wife.
Huh?
Uncle Louie's wife?
Uncle Louie's wife, and the Imony girls. It was Mary Wilson, she was Mary Wilson, and Olympia Klein, and Maggie Sholdo, Maggie Pasco now then, and Adeline. We used to all chum around together.
Aunt Legia, was she?
Not so
Yeah,
much.
that's fine.
No, not that so much. Her dad was so strict that they didn't go anyplace. They didn't go very much. She and Mary. But the old Osakunda was so strict with them. And then they used to ride to boys on a mule, all the time. They just didn't have any horses. They had mules. We used to make fun of them all the time. But,
How old was she when she and Uncle Jack were married?
oh, she was about 20 years old. 20. And he married her just after he and Maggie Pasco went together for 20 years. Not 20 years, 10 years.
Uncle
And-
Jack and Maggie Pasco?
Yes, they went together for 20 years, but they wanted to get married. He wanted to get married, or she did too as far as that goes, but she wouldn't leave her folks, her old folks. And he didn't want to leave his folks either, so they broke up. So Pete Pasco was kind of courting her. Then when he found out for sure that Uncle Jack wasn't going to marry her, he married Maggie within a week, and then within 2 weeks, Uncle Jack married Legia. That's just how it was.
Yeah, that was quite a
Just made up marriages.
Was there much of that at that time
No.
in the community?
Oh,
There
no.
wasn't much.
No, there wasn't much of that. So, see, we got married in 1919 and 1920. My mother got married. Same day, the next year.
And she married
Tony
Tony
Barbero.
Barbero.
Mhm.
Well,
What do you remember of your mother?
Well, I don't remember too much of her. I know that when we lived on the farm in Hamilton, she had all these kids, and she always had a hired girl. They hired, and I used to love that girl. She was from Gransdale, And she had, and of course, and she had a lot of work, and we did a lot of canning, cherries and apricots and peaches and, and all that stuff. And really, and whenever she wanted to go to town, why, she hooked up the little horse and buggy, one horse and a little, and a buggy, and I always remember her, she had a big brown hat with a big brown feather. I always remember that. My mother.
Your mother.
And she'd go by herself, go to do her shopping in Hamilton.
Sounds like she must have been a pretty tough lady, though.
Yes, she was. She was.
They were all tough at that
Yeah,
time.
she was. But my dad never went with her to do anything. I mean, she went and done it all herself.
Really?
The only time he went that I can remember is when I got my first glasses. When I first started school there, and he came with me. He came and bought my glasses the first time. That's the only time I remember. And then I remember, and of course, my mother would take us with her to go to town, and then we'd always go in the Chinese restaurant for our meal, and that was a treat too. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell
Were you
you,
close to your father?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, very close.
you know,
Yeah. But he was strict too. He was a strict. I got one spanking from my father. There I remember. I was already, 10 years old. That's not too long before he died. And it was, so there were some bachelors, three bachelors. They used to come play cards. They used to come and play cards in the evening, these three old men. Not the old men, they were young men. And one day I sat on that guy's lap. And he told me, he said, don't ever do that again. Well, I didn't pay attention to him, I did again. So the next time, I really got a spanking from him. But these men used to come and play cards, and they drink cider and eat apples. Every night these old men would come.
Well, Bitterroot had lots of apples.
Oh, apples, oh yeah. And cider, and they drink their cider.
Your brother Tony, you were close to him too, weren't you?
Very close.
It must have been very difficult when you died.
Oh my, that was terrible. That was a terrible, terrible thing. Yes, and he was such a good guy. He was funny. He could tell some more stories, and he was good to us kids. To my kids. And he was going with a girl. She's Anna's best friend. Anna's best friend, Happy Franklin. He went with her. They were engaged. But he was awful jealous. He was awfully jealous. And they got in a big fight one time, so he made her give him back the ring, and they broke up. And then shortly after that's when he got sick then and died. And to this day, Anna, she the ring back to him, and Anna got the ring, and she had it made into something else. But she's got a bracelet that he gave her yet. She said she's not going to part with that bracelet.
Oh.
Yeah. She lives in Custer, South Dakota. You've heard about the Franklins out in Broadus, haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, there's one of them.
One of them.
Custer.
Happy Franklin.
Oh,
Tony's old girl.
I thought you was talking about your sister.
So Tony never married then?
No. No, he was well liked.
No,
He was well liked, and he
died with tick fever.
he would have married this girl if he wasn't so darn jealous. She couldn't do anything.
Well, how did Grandpa propose to you?
I don't know. How did you propose to me?
How did I propose to you? Well,
I really don't know.
I tell you, maybe she doesn't want to have that registered
What's that?
about your aunt Frances
What about her?
when she caught me kissing her.
Oh, well,
Yeah. You see, we was staying with her aunt. I was working there, and she came up there and stayed with her.
Right?
Well,
we got to be friends, right? Real,
got to be friendly, and one night I kissed her, and her aunt caught me, and so she kicked me out.
She fired him.
Fired me. And when she fired me, she left and went and stayed with her mother.
Back down in,
Back down on the ranch, on the,
oh, okay.
yeah. So, I don't know, it was, I don't know how it proposed, I just went
Where did you go after you got fired?
down to Capris.
I went down to
Went
Canada.
down to Capris. So you were still in the neighborhood then?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
oh, yeah,
yes.
we were seeing each
I
other.
never did
Oh,
leave
yeah,
there.
he'd come up every Sunday, he'd come up.
I went down, stayed at Cappers, and she went,
Oh, he'd come up
Finally
and
went
see.
and stayed with her
Oh,
mother.
yeah,
and
and they tried like everything to break us up, my Uncle Jack and Maggie especially. I know one time that they tried to get me to go with them whenever, Maggie, when they were going together, tried to get me going with them, and whenever they went someplace. And I didn't want to go because I knew he was going to come up and see me, And they tried everything. And one time they wanted to go, they walked a lot when then. They wanted to go see, I don't know if Grandpa remembers or not, but I remember they wanted to go see Charlie Olson's wife, Laura. And we had to walk from, we had to walk a good mile to get there. And I just didn't want to go because I knew Grandpa was coming up. And I just wanted to do anything, so I fainted. I pretended like I fainted. So finally, they took me back home, and then he came. So, well, I've done everything, but they tried to break us up. That was it.
well, they tried to break us up for one thing because I didn't have any.
He didn't have anything, see.
I didn't have nothing. And I used to work for wages. And in fact, even after we got married, I'd go out and work for wages. And I left her home alone and went and worked for in Broadus for wages. And I stayed with who's that girl that was a teacher. I stayed at her mother's place, her and her mother.
The teacher.
Yeah,
In Rowdy?
yeah, I stayed at their house when I worked in Broadus, in the school, and I remember working in the schoolhouse. And we were married already by that time.
Of course, everybody's saying that Grandpa didn't have anything. Nobody really had anything at that point, did they?
Well, we didn't have anything
Well-
either. My mother didn't have anything, only,
Jack Capro was the richest guy in the country at the time.
he's the only one who had a car.
He bought the first car. And I bought my car when we lived in East Fork yet.
No,
Didn't it?
boys,
At Boys.
yeah.
Anyway, it was a 1940 Chevy.
No, nobody had anything. And my mother, I know, when my dad died, he left her $1,000. That's all she had. And that's all the money she had. I don't know how she lived, really. But they used to go. They used to go to St. Ange once a year. Everybody used to do the same thing with a wagon and go to and buy cases of stuff like coffee and But and I really, and of course she done the same. She had but I really don't know how she lived. That's all she had.
Well,
I remember $1,000
when we
and $100. Us kids we got $100.
when we was down there on East Fork, and that was after we was married. We lived that first year. We lived on sage hens, grouse, deer, and antelope.
And beans.
There was plenty of them all over,
And beans.
and beans. The beans we raised in the ranch. And there was a fellow by the name of Castleberry that was a game warden. And he caught me hunting. Or he didn't catch me hunting, I was hunting. And he lived west of us. He had a ranch up there and I'll bet he had 10 kids. Anyway, I was hunting at the time, and instead of arresting me for hunting, what did he do? He says, Jim, he says, come here, they're over here. That was the game warden. He knew as well as the rest of us did that we didn't have anything. We lived on this wild life.
Nobody had anything then.
And somebody, what did they give us for Christmas that one year?
Well, not for Christmas, for Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
My stepdad, that's before he married my mother. But anyway, he gave us the potatoes
Oh, yeah, that's
for Thanksgiving, and we thought we had, oh, that was a treat, really.
And he was,
He hasn't had any potatoes.
Oh, we haven't had potatoes for I don't know how long.
and he was a heavy drinker. But, and every time
When we decided to get married, there was no place where we could get a license. We had to go to the county seat, which was Ekalaka. We had to write to Ekalaka and get our license. And to get a ring, we had to send to Susan Roebuck to get a wedding ring. And so we waited for the license to come, and then we set a date. And we wanted to dance, of course. And we had to go horseback, and we went around the whole community, all over, to horseback to invite everybody to our wedding. So then we were married at 8 o'clock in the evening, and just as the peace came.
Where were you married at? In the
At
church?
home, at the house.
At the house.
And then we had, and then besides that, the day before we got married, Mary Wilson, was Mary Imony then, came and she baked cakes and cookies and fixed sandwich. A fellow by the name of Beefsteak, we called him Beefsteak, but he was Lena Trucano's uncle. He gave me chickens. He gave me, I don't know, gave us 6 or 7 chickens, so we'd have chicken sandwiches. And Mary took care of all that stuff. She stayed a day and a half and took care of all of that stuff, cooked for us and everything. So then we were married at 8 o'clock that evening, and just as the feast came, and all he said, I don't remember exactly what words he said, but he said, I pronounce you man and wife, and he went, ha, 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 ha. And that's all there was to it.
That was the end, huh?
We didn't.
Didn't say I do or anything.
No, we didn't promise anything.
How many people do you suppose were there?
It was about 50 or 60 people.
Well, now, what house was this in? Was this the one on East Fork?
That was on East Fork, Grandma's house.
Who built that house?
Uncle Louis.
I and Uncle Louis.
Oh.
And then, of course, they danced all night long until morning. And that was it. So then,
Had a rough floor in it. There was cracks in that
I
floor.
remember that rough. Yeah. I remember the rough floor. Okay, now then, when did you go to Belle Fourche?
Then-
honeymoons.
Mert Edwards had sheep there, a bunch of sheep, and Grandpa was kind of working for him. So he had Grandpa take a load of wool into Belle Fourche, and he took it in about on the 1st of July. So we decided and I wrote a load of wool, and then was stacked way up high. You know how they were wagons with the wool was stuck way up high. And I rode on the top of the wool, and we went into we went 12 miles out of Belle Fourche. We broke down and broke a wagon wheel. So we had to stay there all night. Tony Barbera was with us, and another wagon.
On your honeymoon.
Yeah, he was ahead. And so we stayed there all night, so to get the wheel fixed. They took it into Belle. And we camped out, and then we were out of water, so we decided we'd walk and see if we could find us water, and we found a a nice little running stream of water, just clear and nice, and it was cool and everything. We drank that water, and believe me, we got sick. We were up all night long.
Alkaline.
So we stayed there until the next day in the afternoon. They got the wheel fixed. And we went into Belfouche, and it was the 4th of July. And it seemed like there was Grandma Capra and Aunt Mary and some other Broadus people there, and they all camped. We didn't go to there was no place to sleep anyway. We had tarps, and we camped by a livery stable, and we stayed there for about 3 days. That's our honeymoon.
That was your honeymoon.
Well then, one of the Edwards boys had a car, and we decided I wanted to go to Leeds. It was an open car. So he was going to take us to Leeds, but it was kind of a storm coming, but he said, oh, we'll beat the storm. So we got in the car anyway, and we started up to Leeds, and it a downpour. There was just a downpour. And I had on my beautiful purple dress. It was a satin purple dress, and that just downpour before we got to Leeds. So we got up to Leeds, I had to undress and go to his friend's house and dry my clothes before we could come back. So we stayed there till evening, and then we came back down East Fork. Well, in fact, we lived there. You was born there, and the twins were born there, and the twins were 2 years old when we moved up on our own ranch. So we lived there 5 or 6 years in Grandma's house. And then we moved up on the ranch. When you were born,
Uncle Jack drove to get the doctor.
I started to get sick about 9 o'clock at night. So he went horseback to get a doctor at Pineal, which was about 14 or 15 miles away. And there was a big thunderstorm coming. It was a thundering and lightning, and he was scared of that. He was scared of lightning, Uncle Jack was. But anyway, he got up to the doctor, and the doctor had a car, and he got in with the doctor. He came down. We got there about 11 o'clock at night.
Now, where was the doctor? What town?
Pineal,
Pineal?
Montana.
Oh, okay.
There's no Pineal left.
It's up by Ridge, what is now
No.
Ridge, isn't it?
Our old boys, above Old Boys.
Oh, okay.
And so the doctor looked at me, examined me, and he said, oh, we got plenty of time. So he went to bed. The doctor went to bed. Here I was crying and everything else. And she was born about 11 o'clock that next day. So we had the doctor for her.
And then when the twins born, I want Grandpa to tell about Grandma Capra too, like you did before.
Okay. So then we moved up to the ranch in December. It seemed like we always moved in December. And I remember we had a goldfish, a jar with a goldfish in it. And when we moved up, of course, on a wagon up there, by the time we got up there, the poor fish was frozen solid in the bowl. Cold? It was really cold.
But tell about the twins.
Let's
go through that again.
the twins were the day after Thanksgiving. We spent Thanksgiving Day at Capra's, and that night they took me home. I had a bad cold, real bad cold, so they took me home, and about 8, 9 o'clock that night, I got sick. So he went down to get Grandma, walked. He walked, I don't know, to about 3 or 4 miles, and got Grandma. She came up, and I was sick until, about 10 o'clock that next morning. And Grandma Capra came down, and then Aunt Frances, we knew that Aunt Frances wanted to see the baby born, so he went to get Aunt Frances. And about a little afternoon, you tell about that, a little afternoon, tell about when you got there, about Grandma.
About Grandma Capra, you tell about all the babies, the two
Well,
babies.
she was taking care of her, Grandma Capra was. And when I went to get Aunt Frances, and we came back, the twins were born. And she came out of the door, And she says to me, son of a bitch, Dewey. And that
That
meant
scared
two.
you. It scared you.
That meant two of them. But that's what you call me, son of a bitch.
I can imagine, he was scared. He couldn't remember when she said that. He could, something could have happened to me or something. He was scared. But anyway, they were born all my kids were born around noon. Isn't that funny? She was born around, and Elinda was born a little after noon too. But that was, and then of course the twins were something, and there was no twins around, never heard of twins around any place in that country. Everybody in the country came to see the twins. Just everybody. People that I didn't even know came down to take a look at the twins. So, then they were sick. When I had a cold and they were born, they were really sick. And Millie was just about, well, I think she would have died.
I didn't expect her to live.
She was just, she couldn't hardly cry. She wouldn't nurse. Couldn't hardly cry. It sounded like a sick cat, That's how she was. And Maxine was really bad too. So I got some, Grandpa went to Boys and got some Vicks. So we rubbed them, first we gave them a bath with hot mustard, some hot water with mustard in it, dry mustard. And got them and give them a hot bath until their skin got real red. And then I rubbed them good with all that stuff, that Vicks, and wrapped them in a blanket, and I put them in bed and kept a hot fire all night long. The next morning they were fine. We broke that cough and they were real good.
Now, how old were they? 3 months?
3 months old.
3 months old.
And the snow, we couldn't get any place.
Remember that?
The snow was covering the posts, and they were so deep all over. So we got through that.
How about some of the other things that Mrs. Cadell,
Well, first of all, Maxine had this growth. It was what they call it, eczema in the back of her head here, and it kept growing and kept growing. It was terrible. So this Mrs. Cadell, she was an old witch lady down. I called her a witch lady, but she was a good neighbor anyway. And she told me to get some skunk grease and rub it on it. And we did, and she got over it. And Millie had diarrhea, real bad. She just awful. So she said, well, you take put a little bit of whiskey in a saucer, put a little bit of cinnamon in it, and light it, set a fire to it, and then just give them a little bit of that with a spoonful, give them a glass. So I did that, and she got over it. And then they had pink eye.
Sound like they were sick all the time.
They did. The first 6 months they were sick. The first 3 months they were terrible. Millie had the worst pink eye, and it was tears were running down her eyes all the time, and her eyes was shut, and there was like blood coming down here. So finally, Uncle Jack took us to Boys, to Broadus, and Step Holt. He gave me some liquid. What is it? Some kind of medicine. I don't know what it was. It was liquid something, and I washed her eyes with that. They got over that.
I mean, it must have been old man Holt, wasn't it? Wasn't the old man Holt?
Step. Yeah, the old man.
Step Holt.
Yeah, the old man.
Who's
And then, about Linda, well then I got sick. I was sick for a long time. And I went to several doctors. I went to a doctor there in Broadus. They didn't do any good. And finally, Grandpa decided to take me to Lead. And it was cold winter too. It was real cold, stormy, and a lot of snow. And he hooked up a sled.
homemade sled?
A homemade sled, and put a tarp over it, and put a lantern in it, and a lot of blankets, and we took off didn't have any roads, just over the snow.
For Lee?
For Lead. we went as far as halfway to Alzada and stayed all night at a place there. And then we went on to Alzada, and from Alzada on, we got a car, and they took us to leave.
When was this?
That was
After the twins were born?
after the twins were born.
Did the kids go with you, or did they
Oh,
stay
no.
with somebody?
No, my mother, and Aunt Tina.
Oh,
But anyway, that's where we got to leave, and I was up there a whole month. Finally, I got okay. I came back. The minute I come back, I got pregnant with Linda.
was Grandpa up there the whole month with you?
He
Oh,
took me up, and then he came.
oh, I see.
He was lonely.
Well, then, and of course, we went out to my mother, when she was born, I went and stayed with my mother. And she was the longest, she was the hardest birth of all of them. I got sick at 5 o'clock in the morning, and Uncle Tony and Guy Parker had just come home from a dance. And I remember I was so sick, and they were sat at the table. I was sitting at one end of the table having pains, and they were sitting at the other end of the table eating raw oysters with ketchup.
Where did they get raw oysters?
And boys.
Well, I mean, where would they got them? They didn't get them at Boys, or somebody's baby.
From Miles, they probably went to Miles. They'd been out all night. This was Monday morning, after they'd been out all night. Well, anyway, then Uncle Tony decided to go to a doctor. He went to Broadus to call the doctor, Dr. James, and he wasn't there. He was in Miles City, and he wouldn't come out. So he came back home, and I wasn't getting any better. It kept getting worse and worse. And so they decided to go and call Dr. Sandy in Ecolak. Back again, called me. So then I was sick from 5 o'clock that morning until, this was Sunday morning, until noon the next Monday morning. And she was born. It was in a storm. There was a blizzard. In May.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the doctor came, he got there an hour after she was born.
Came clear from Ecolak.
And he only charged us $50. $50
that's all.
come from clear from Ecolak.
Now, was it about that time that you had built a new house on the homestead?
No, we were already living at the new house. We don't see, the twins were about 3 years old when we moved up there.
You told me 2 before.
Huh?
You said 2.
Or 2 or 3 anyway.
Yeah.
And the day that she was born, Grandpa planted 10, what kind of trees were they?
Chinese elm.
Chinese elm trees on that place. You could plant the day she was
In
born.
the yard.
In the yard. Well, there's only one left of all the trees was up there. But anyway, so we lived, then we,
Well, that was a nice house then that you built
I was gonna
there,
say,
wasn't
he
it?
built this house himself, all by himself, didn't he, most of it?
well, Uncle Louie helped him a little. Uncle Louie helped him.
Oh, did he?
But all he had was a hammer and a saw and a what?
Plain?
Square.
A square. Yeah, and it was, at that time, it was the nicest house up there.
Yeah, it was the nicest house in
We
the...
had
What do you remember about building that house, Grandpa?
What do I remember about it?
Yeah.
Well, we built it ourselves, and somebody, who was it that helped me?
Uncle Louie.
Uncle Louis Julius. He helped to build the house. He was he studied to be a minister, or a priest. But then he came out to Montana and he met Aunt Mary and he married. So he never did become a priest. But what was it? Where did he die?
Well, go ahead and tell about the house.
The house, yeah.
Well, the house, we built a house, we built 2 rooms downstairs, and then there was
And upstairs. And
an upstairs to it.
With 2
And one of the, I think that old fellow that lived with us.
Mike. Oh, Mike.
Old Micah. He lived with us, and he slept upstairs. And the cat, we had a cat, and he'd go upstairs, and sleep on Mike's feet. And he'd get down, or he'd cuss that cat out
No,
and chase him out of there. But we just had this upstairs, and there was a little place at the bottom of the stairs, and we had a heating stove, wooden heating stove. And that's where our front room was with the.
But you had 2 bedrooms upstairs, wasn't
No, we had one big room, and Mike slept at one end, and we slept
You
on the
had
other.
a curtain separating it, didn't you?
Huh?
You didn't have partitions, you had to have a
No,
curtain
we had,
separating.
no, we had no petition, and we slept at the other end. And the twins were just ornery, they were full of the devil anyway. And we had this black cat that used to go up and crawl on the bed, just on the bed. Well, one day, they decided to do something, some trick to play on Mike. So they was going to put the cat in the bed, under the covers, but the cat wouldn't stay there. So Maxine crawled under the covers, under that bed, in the bed, and when Mike come up here and go to bed, well, she was there, and she pinched his toes. And Mike says, that goddamn black cat. Oh, they played more tricks on
They
him.
used to really devil him.
Oh.
Now, who was Mike?
Mike was, I tell you, what he was an old sheep herder, but he was my mother's first beau, really first. He wanted to marry my mother because he was he just was a sheep herder. They wouldn't,
They wouldn't let her marry.
No. But he lived with us 11 years. Then he lived with my mother after we moved to Boise. And before that, he was living with my aunt. He lived with her for them a long time. He was a good friend of the Capras.
Yeah, his friend of the captain, he was kind of a hired man around that area.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he just come and helped out, nobody paid him.
No, nobody paid him. He just,
Room and board.
just room and board.
What was his last name?
Mike DePauli.
Oh, okay, that's Mike Polly, okay.
And I
Pretty
always
good just talk
remember
about it.
this, his old gray horse, he called Smokey.
Yeah.
Oh, he loved that horse.
Smokey, because
Smokey.
he's Smokey.
And he'd go out, like he'd go over to Pasco's and get drunk with Pete Pasco or somebody like that. And then he'd come home and you could hear him singing this song, Daisy, Daisy, you know, that's the only
Daisy
song
was
he
his
ever
song.
knew. But you always know Mike had been out and had quite a few drinks and he'd come home talking about Daisy, or singing about Daisy. About every 3 or 4 months he'd do that, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah, every once in a while.
Every
he'd
3
go
or
out.
4 months, he'd go off to visit one of the neighbors and get too much to drink and.
Well, he was a good old guy. He helped me a lot. He really helped me a lot.
Oh,
He used to help me wash clothes. He had a pipe. He always had a pipe, and he'd fill his pipe, and he had a little rock he put in his pipe to keep so the sparks would fly.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and he'd smoke his pipe, and he'd
sit there on the chair.
ring. That washing machine had to go, by hand.
Uh-huh.
And he'd wash clothes forever, all the time. He was really helping me a
It's
lot.
funny how the things now, as you stop and think that you remember, I always remember his bath, Saturday night bath.
That's right.
Oh, it was a real ritual. He'd get the water heating and everything, and after everybody went to bed, he would take his bath.
In the tub, wash tub, and it'd take him, forever.
Trim his toenails, and I guess he would.
He'd wash his head first, and he trimmed his toenails, and he cut his mustache, and shave. Oh, I'll tell you, it took him 2-3 hours to take a bath. But he was a nice, clean man. He was really nice and clean. Oh, he was a good guy.
What you said, tell me about the twins.
Oh,
When they grew up,
the twins, well, of course, they just gave him a lot of.
they were full of
And he
help.
says, "Boy, you're going to smoke a lot of cigars with those twins. Boy, that's what he said. You're going to smoke a lot of cigars with those twins."
What else did he used to say to you about the twins? Seemed like there was something else he used to say. Well, I don't know. He was always talking about twins, giving them all the bad time that they used to do.
Grandpa, where did you haul the lumber from for the house?
There were sawmills around the country, and we bought all the rough lumber from these sawmills. But the finishing part, we had to get in Broadus. And I don't remember how we hauled it, but we must have went there with a team of horses and hauled it that way.
Did somebody have a truck or anything like
No.
that in those days?
The first truck, the first car or truck, what was it, a car or truck? Jack Capra was the
Jack-
first one in the neighborhood
No, there was no trucks.
to have a car. That was her uncle.
And we had the floor was really nice. I finally got a linoleum put on the floor, and we papered the kitchen. Remember that? Yeah. Yeah, that was yeah. It was the nicest house then, but not now. You want to
The
see?
thing I always remember about that house, and this is really funny, they made beer, had their big crock of beer right under the stairs. The stairs were going up like that, and then here was the kitchen stove on the stairs, and had this big crock of beer. And we had a little pet cottontail. And this cottontail would run up and down the stairs and all that. Well, one night, poor little cottontail run down the stairs and must have missed the stair and fell in the beer.
Next morning, I found him in the beer.
Oh,
They'd have a towel over the beer.
We used to make this homemade whiskey.
Uh-huh.
We'd ferment the grain or whatever we used in a big 20-gallon jar. And when it was fermented, then we'd run it through a still and get homemade whiskey out of it.
Now, that's what you said you sold then.
Then we'd take it to, I would take it to a dance, or they would come right to the house and get it. And there was a couple of guys there came one time, and they wanted some moonshine. And we didn't know too much about them, so we told them we didn't have any moonshine. And they believed it, and they left us there. And they went up to John Jerome's, and he was a bachelor. And he was one of these guys, if you heard him talk, why, he was the meanest guy in the country, and instead of being the meanest guy, he was one of the best guys that there was. So they went up there and they wanted some moonshine, and one of these guys' name was what?
Vanilla chips.
Do you remember?
Well, I don't remember.
No, I remember one of them anyway, but now I can't call his name. And they told John for moonshine, and he had a shotgun just behind him, and he grabbed the shotgun and he says, "Take the door." And they took the door all right. They left just as fast as they could go. They was afraid of him. And he walked the boys to buy his groceries. Well, he got down the road about halfway, about where our ranch is now, and somebody come along and tooted the horn, and they didn't pick him up. So they got down there a little ways, and they went in the ditch, and he come along walking. He said, "Ha ha!" He said, "You whistle now." That was.
Tell me about some of the dances
Huh?
and some of the things you went to, the entertainment that you had in the
Well,
early
all the
years.
entertainment we had was mostly dances, and every little holiday, they'd have a party, and everybody would go and stay all night. We had a lot of, at the schoolhouse, we had a lot of dances at the schoolhouse.
And stay all night?
Huh?
Did
Yeah,
stay all
stay all night.
Stay
We'd
all
take all the kids, we'd take and put them on the benches and put our coats on top of them and let them stay there, and the people would just dance all night. Of course, we had horses, and wagons, couldn't go home until daylight. And any little holiday,
Well, the holidays they celebrated were the saints' days.
the Saint Day,
Saint Anthony, so that's when Grandpa Barbero would have this big party at their house. Everybody'd come and eat and bring food. Remember, we'd go to Pasco's, must have been, his name was Pete, must have been
St. Peter.
St. Peter's Day or
the
something.
same thing.
Every Saint Day,
Every
they
every
really
Saint Day,
celebrated.
right, they have to.
Just
And-
like,
Fortunately, every day has a Saint's Day, right?
so if you could find the right person with that saint name, they had a big party and they had their
That's right.
wine.
And especially one time,
Everything else.
Grandpa Barbero, I call him Grandpa Barbero, but that's my stepdad. Anyway, he took, it was on Thanksgiving, I think, Kate, I was remembering. We were down there for Thanksgiving, and he took the twins, and he got them drunk, and they laid under the table, under the kitchen table for the longest time, and they were drunk, and they were just little kids, weren't they?
Yeah, 3 or 4, I think. But anyway,
Well, when he was drunk, he was hard to get along with, but he never did say anything to me. Never did.
But that's how, and then, of course, we go to Pineal, and we go to All Regis. They had dances at All Regis, and they had a big hall, not at Hammond, it's at All Regis, on the ranch. They had a big hall, and they did a lot of dances there. And then after they quit dances, then they had dance hall at Hammond. And then where else would we go to
we
dances?
go to all the schoolhouse dances.
And all the schoolhouses, yeah.
They didn't pay your wages, straight wages. They'd go around and take up a collection.
Yeah.
For the
And
that's
musicians.
right, for the
everybody throws
musicians.
so much in
That
there.
was my job.
And if we got $5 for that night's playing, we got lots of money.
That, my job was taking tickets. I got paid for that too.
You actually took tickets then?
Huh?
You took tickets?
I collected the money.
Oh, collected them.
I collected the money.
Yeah.
They played,
But always the schoolhouse dances out, they'd have a Christmas program, they'd always have a dance afterwards, wouldn't they?
yeah.
And, you know, then they'd have dances
They
in
had
between.
dances. Whenever they could,
Lots of
a lot of dances. One time we went to Alzada, Kay remembers that. And played for a dance, and Alzada is supposed to be a tough town. And towards morning, I don't know, somebody got fighting and began throwing the beer bottles at the lights.
I don't remember that.
Burn all the lights out, and they were throwing bottles all over. And so I took the kids, I don't know, it was you.
But I don't remember.
Put the kids
The
under the
twins, I had to
table.
put the kids under a bench, under the table to keep them from getting hit with the bottles. That was tough, that time.
Tell us about everybody making their own wine and the bottling parties then.
Well,
Where did you get the grapes from?
Well, we used to have to buy them in lead and then have them shipped off and pay the freight on them from there
got them in Deadwood, Grandpa, not Lee.
to the ranch. And there were a couple of guys that went back and forth all the time. I don't even remember the
And
names
trucks then.
anymore. But they were hauling the freight and people would pay them
That was the Sowers boys,
so much.
Buster and,
Oh, but mother, it must have been somebody before the Sowers boys.
well, yeah, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, there was somebody before then, I don't know who it was, but then I remember these great big truckloads of grapes. And then I remember Grandpa Barbero getting in this big tub with his clean new boots and mashing the grapes for his
They
wine.
trumped the grapes.
Trumped the grapes,
Everybody always had
purple boots in the fall always. And of course, I was always right there with him in the middle of it. I was probably 7 or 8 maybe, I don't suppose I was about that age.
Well, they all made their own wine, and
Well, after they trumped the grapes, I don't know, they put everything in a barrel,
yeah,
and they'd have to ferment it for so long. No sugar, just the grapes. And after so long, why, they knew how long to leave it. They'd draw that out, and then they'd add some sugar and some water and make the second wine again. and they leave it so long, they ferment and leave it so long. And after they drew that out, then they take all the remains of the grapes and make the whiskey, make the moonshine.
They put sugar in it.
Put some more sugar and then make moonshine.
Fermented it.
So it went,
And they had a copper tube that they put in a copper boiler. And this tube was made in twists or circles and came out of this barrel. And you filled this barrel with water and the steam would come up. And when it went through the barrel, then it was liquid.
just a little bit, Janie.
That then was the moonshine, when it liquid.
How many gallons of wine do you suppose you could make out of a truckload?
Well, you could make quite a little wine out of it.
They make about, 50 gallons, 50 gallons of wine.
Oh, yeah, they had these great big
Oh,
barrels.
yeah.
I remember
Well, they'd
the
have
great
enough
big
for-
barrels.
Enough for
Did
dinner
they
a
always
year.
keep them in the barrels? I don't remember that, or did they bottle the wine?
No, I don't think they bottled too much
I
wine.
think they kept it in
They just
barrels.
kept it in the barrel with a
Kept it in the
spigot,
barrels.
you know. With a spigot, and they could get their wine. Oh, yes, everybody.
There was 3 rattlesnake dens. And there was one, about 200 yards from the house. And then there was 320 acres there. And halfway down there, this 320 acres, there was another rattlesnake den. And then there was 3 rattlesnake dens on the ranch on 320 acres. And there was a hill north of the main road, and there was a rattlesnake den up there on that hill. And I'd go along and every time I caught any of them out, I'd kill them. And we did finally get rid of them that way.
Well, I don't know where they got rid of them.
One time you
Well-
killed how many? How
That-
many did you kill?
Grandpa was gone. That's when he went to get his teeth. He went to Fort Harrison, wherever it was. And Jack Coretta, Lena Trucano's brother, stayed with us. And all he did was look for snakes. And he had them lined up on the fence. I think he had 30 or 35 snakes all up there in a week's time, all lined up there on the, he would put them on the fence. But we tried to get rid of them, and we put boiling water down the hole, you know, one right there close to the house, but didn't bring them out. And finally, you put some kerosene down and set it on fire, you know, and I don't know whether we got the snakes out or not. I don't remember that.
Mike Londa has told me that they have still had a lot of snake problems up in there.
Well, you know what? Up at our ranch now, the old ranch, we went up there not too long ago. Were you there, Kate?
No, I came down that
And
way.
we had a cellar. We went to get in, not me, but Joy and Dick was there, and Art, and they went to go in the cellar, and it's full of rattlesnakes. They're all in there, the dens in there.
They think that there was full. It sounded
Well,
like
it sounded like they were full. There was more than one rattle, I know. In that, so they're there yet.
So then after that, you then went through some tough times on the
Yeah,
ranch?
they went, one thing I remember is one year, now this must have been before they started killing all the cattle, that my dad and a bunch of the neighbors trailed a bunch of cattle to Gillette. I remember them getting ready to trail these cattle to Gillette.
Yeah.
Then it must have been a year or two afterwards that they had to get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
The government paid them for
$4
killing.
a head.
I didn't remember what it was, for
I don't know
killing
for the
these
cows,
cows.
but they
I
killed them, and just let them
remember.
lay there. Just let them lay.
I remember that we had eight head of cattle left, and I think it was the year, that dry year.
Yeah.
And we had to get rid of them, or sell them, and I think we was lucky if we got $15 a head for them.
No, Grandpa, what was it that paid you $4 a head?
That was when they were shooting them, weren't they?
Yeah, that's when they were shooting
$4
them.
a head. And then we got the sheep, the bum lambs.
Yeah.
And I remember I hated those bum lambs.
Well, then I'm funny, so when we got the
had to feed them all the time.
chance to go to buy the store, why we sold the lambs.
I have a story to tell about a bum lamb. I suppose I'll never forget it.
south of town.
I was mad one day because I had to go out and feed these bum lambs. And I had this little tin cup, and this one was, I don't know, being ornery. So I started beating on him on the back with that tin cup, and I paralyzed his back legs. I never will forget that.
You bully.
I really did, that poor
Doesn't
man.
sound like Aunt Kay, does it?
And eventually the coyotes got him. He got so, he'd go, but he dragged his legs all the time, and the coyotes got him.
I don't remember what we paid for
And
that.
I really think, it really sort of taught me a lesson in losing my temper.
And you never lost it since, right?
Well, I've lost it since, but I remember I used to say, Jim, when Jim was real, Jim, better be careful. One of these days you may do something you'll regret.
Another thing our kids used to do, all of them, when we were still on the ranch, when we go out to milk, they'd always come out there with their little cup, and we'd milk in the cup, that real foamy milk, and they'd breathe their milk that way, warm milk.
I used to love warm milk.
Oh, yeah.
I never drank much milk in my day, but I remember that cup of warm milk.
Have you ever done that?
Yes, I enjoyed that.
I remember that when we got there, so that we separated the milk, we'd take a 5-gallon can of cream to boys, and we'd get $5 for a 5-gallon can of cream.
And that's what they lived on. I mean, that's what they
That's
bought
what-
their.
was your money.
That's all we had.
$5 a week.
Unless I would get a job, I worked several different places once in a while when I got a job. And one place that I had to work in was in Broadus. And I don't remember, I think we worked on the highway down there in Broadus, and I stayed with a girl's mother and her that taught school.
I don't know.
Sadie Porter.
Sadie
Yeah,
Porter.
Sadie.
That's right.
Sadie
Well,
and
I
her mother.
stayed with her and her mother.
But that was, now, he worked on the WPA projects. That was during that depression too. He worked on the old high school.
Now, from there, then, you moved down to, you bought the store at Boys,
We bought the store of
the
the boys.
post office. Tell us about,
In 1947, right?
Yeah, and when I only got cancellation. Only what stamps I canceled. That's all the money I got when we first went in there.
Postage was what, 2 cents or 3 cents?
That's all the money I got. It was probably $20 a month, maybe not even that much at first, until the CC camp came, and then, of course, they started giving me a salary. And every year it came up and come up,
Oh, well, it came up because they put a CC camp
Well, that's what
about
we're
3
talking about.
miles below Boys there. And they all got their mail there. And then that boosted the post office up to, I don't remember how much, but
Quite a lot.
Quite a bit,
it
yeah.
was quite a little money.
now, where did you get the money to get into the store?
My cousin, I borrowed it from I went to Lead, and he gave me $1,000.
Which cousin, who is this?
Frank Settle, my cousin, and he was well off. And boy, he said, you better be careful with that money. He gave me a money belt to tie around my waist, and he put that money in my money belt to come home with. And then this old Mike, he had some little bit of money from herding sheep, other people, and he let us have $300 and to start the groceries. Bought flour and sugar, just a little bit. From then on, we just kept going.
We gradually built it up, the store. Of course, there was another store in town at the time.
In
Paul
Boys.
Bruce's.
Paul Bruce had a store just about a quarter of a mile from us, or less than that. And he'd been there for several years. They had moved from the old Boys, it was about 3 miles north of there. And when they put that highway in there, why, they built a building down there by the highway and moved their store down. And there was 2 stores there for quite a while, so we didn't get very much money.
Well, then another thing I wanted to say about, when they put in the highway, I kept boarders. I had 19 and 20 boarders. fed them well, 2 meals a day and then, and lunches.
Is there people working on the highway?
Working the highway, they slept, they stayed right there. They slept in the schoolhouse and where else? Wherever they could.
There's some old cabins there or something.
There was no cabin then.
Oh, okay.
No, there was no cabin.
Okay.
I know some of them slept at the schoolhouse. And I don't know where they slept. But anyway, Mama helped me, and Erie Richards was there. She helped some, but 19 and 20 boarders I
And
had.
the twins were home.
And the twins were
I wasn't
home.
I was in Broadus already then.
Yeah, you were already in
I
Broward.
remember the only time I was home is I got the measles. Remember how sick I was?
Oh, yes.
And I was home there for a
In
couple
Broadus
of
doing
weeks.
what?
Well,
I worked for Aunt Anna Smith.
She left home when she was 14 years old.
And worked for Aunt Anna in the store.
And when she started started school in
The year
Broadus.
before I started high school.
Yeah.
I worked the summer before, years
She
before.
worked for Burton's, and she never come home then. She come.
well, there was a,
And then the twins would help Grandpa. Grandpa had to go oil. What do you do? Put oil.
I worked for the highway department.
But what did you do to the trucks? You had to
Well,
go.
there was no oil roads then. It was all gravel. We hauled gravel with a team and dumped it along this road, and they had a scraper with a blade on it, and they would level these roads
You
up.
didn't haul the gravel with the team. then.
No,
You
no,
had
no, no.
trucks.
We had trucks. They
You
had trucks then.
No.
But Grandpa, then Millie and Maxine was helping then. Millie was to get up with you at 4 o'clock at night, in the morning, and go with you to do whatever you did to the trucks. And
Oh,
Maxine
gas
would
the
help
trucks.
start doing lunches.
Gas the trucks, didn't they?
They had the trucks. They hauled gravel with the trucks.
Well,
And he had to go and do something to the truck, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I know Millie always went with him.
the boss on that highway lived about 3 miles east of us, right close to the highway. And I don't remember his last name now. I think his first name was Herman.
Well, what about?
Herman Doden, yeah, but that's after the highway was.
Oh, that was
complete.
after the highway.
That was after it was complete, that was the maintenance
Yeah.
boss. We're talking about when it was being built, oil.
That's when it was being built and when they gravelled it. Remember?
It was built a long time before.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember, and
Just
then,
a dirt road, is
yeah,
all
it was a dirt road and then they gravelled it.
We're done.
Okay.
You're done?
Yep,
Well, that's good.
Oh.
Finished it all up?
yep.